Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Welcome. Welcome to Staying Strong and Positive for Ourselves and Our Children, a webinar series offered by Be Strong Families. We'd like to welcome all participants to this 30-minute webinar. We'll be starting now and we'll be ending about 1:30 Eastern Standard Time.
Hello. Thank you, Tammy. Hi.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome.
We will be getting started shortly.
This webinar today is on relationship-based practice and making effective referrals, determining real needs, providing real support. I am one of your co-hosts. My name is Brenda Kinsler. I am a senior consultant with Be Strong Families and a retired social worker of about 38 years.
I'm so sorry. Thank you, Brenda. Good afternoon, everyone. I am co-host to Brenda. My name is Latisha Atkins. I'm joining you all the way from Washington, D.C., and I am a consultant with Be Strong Families as well. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Okay, so ways to engage. Just a few housekeeping rules. If you are talking, we are going to ask that you please ensure that your phone, your computer, laptop, that it is on mute. When you are ready to comment, you can simply raise your hand and someone will unmute you. And then you will please note, once you're unmuted on the Be Strong Family side, you will then need to unmute yourself to be heard. As you know, technology can be wacky sometimes, but just bear with us if something should happen. Be patient with us and we'll work those kinks right out. And also, if you don't want to raise your hand to make your comment vocally, you can write that in the chat. So feel free to type your comments in the group chat. Just make sure that it is going to all panelists and attendees so that everyone can see your comments. And again, welcome to today's webinar. As we get into the agreements, we're going to be asking that you speak from your own experience. Use I statements. If you could refrain from sharing other people's personal stories, we would really appreciate that. And the golden rule today: treat other people the way you want to be treated. And we're asking that you bring your full presence. If you can refrain from multitasking, we would greatly appreciate that. And as you know, if you need a moment, just take a moment, and we'll be right back. We'll be right here when you join us. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. If I can get folks to kind of just type in the chat if you do agree to those agreements, greatly appreciate it. I see some of you folks are already ahead of me, so thank you so much. Those agreements come in. Thank you, thank you. Okay.
Okay. So when we talk about determining real needs, what do we mean when we say real need? If we work in the field of social work or child welfare or education or any helping profession, we always want to say people need. But what do we mean when we say real need? You can please put your answers in the chat, or you can indicate by a raise of your hand if you can share with us what you think we mean when we say real need. Oftentimes okay. Adrian says needs are essential items versus wants that are desires beyond essential need. That's true, Adrian. And in the work that we do, when we think that people need something, what often are we referring to beyond the essential need of house, food, and clothing? Rebecca saying more than just a want, a basic need to sustain life. So Sarah says real needs are self-determined by individuals and families themselves. We're getting a lot of good responses.
Yes. And
that is vital for their lives. Could also mean what the family reports as a need, not what agencies think they need. Good point, Denise. Thank you. Could also mean, okay, so Rebecca agrees with Denise. And that's actually what we want to hone in on, Denise's response, because it could also mean what the family reports as a need, not what the agencies think they need. And that's a really good point, because oftentimes what the agency has identified that families need is not necessarily what the family actually needs to sustain. So those are all really good responses. And I would just ask Denise if she could give us an example of when that might have happened in her work. Needs could just be a way to vent, someone to listen to. Adrian says agencies cannot help with good friendships, yet they are essential. Good, excellent point, Adrian. You're talking about the protective factors and social connections. All right. Denise, if you could just kind of expand a little bit on your statement, that would help us understand a real critical point in this discussion for today, which is what the family identifies and what the agency says they need. Because oftentimes those two are in conflict, right? You can put it in the chat, Denise. So she says, if a family member reports not needing mental health treatment, and that is the only service that is offered, right? So when you start thinking about a family member reporting not having or needing mental health intervention, but that's the only service that's offered at that organization, how do we handle that? Now, Andrew, how do we handle that? Because oftentimes an agency may only offer a certain array of services. The family comes in because they know they need something, they just may not know how to ask for it. And we, as the service providers, have to know, well, what exactly do these families need? Is it what the agency's offering, or is it what they're not saying? And those are often very conflictual. In working with families, Tamara finds it is important to ask them what they need.
Yes.
We satisfy what they are seeking and build that relationship. We can then come in with our own agenda or what we think they may benefit from. That's a really good point, because oftentimes when families are expressing a need, in my experience, it has been that what presented is not actually what the underlying issue is. When we think about families, for example, who the children are not coming to school, for example, the presenting problem is, oh, they're truant. But when we look and we dig and we look at some of these comments, like Adrian was saying, maybe mom's working several jobs trying to keep this family together, and getting the kids to school is important to her, but also putting food on the table is equally important. So that presenting problem of truancy is not really what mom needs to help with. What mom needs help with is maybe organizing herself, that she's able to do everything without overwhelming herself, and truancy would then correct itself. Does that make sense to everybody? The presenting issue is one thing, but the underlying issue is what the help needs to be. Denise says they may report needing help with childcare for a break. It isn't childcare, it's more mom is overwhelmed maybe with the number of children that's at home or the lack of resources. Carolyn says our team discovered by asking that a family did not have a working refrigerator. This was a critical, immediate need. I think what we're getting, Tish, if you would agree with me, the responses are indicating to us that at the end of it, this comes down to asking the right questions to find out what exactly is the need.
Absolutely.
Not we go in what is presented to us, but also asking and developing that relationship so we can figure out what exactly do they need.
Absolutely.
They not know what they need, but they know there is a problem. That's correct. I'm sorry, Tish.
No, and you're absolutely correct. And I was thinking as you were talking, just, talking about that issue of truancy and how, the underlying issue, right, was not necessarily the truancy, is that mom, needed to work also. So how does she prioritize those things? So really getting to the root cause of the problem, really, essentially. And when I think about the needs and that everyone has needs, and just thinking about, us in doing this work, when we provide the right assistance at the right time to those families or these families we're working with, it can actually be life-saving. So really uncovering and getting to the root cause of what the issue or what the real need is so vital.
And actually, Ben just actually said that he asked the question, what do they need? I lost it. Okay. He asked the question, what do they need and what is going right instead of what is going wrong, because it will lead you to the negatives. Yeah. That's an interesting way to go into a family. And that is actually what strengthening families does. That is what the protective factors help us with. Because if we're going in looking at what is mom doing right, as opposed to what it is she's doing wrong, we can figure out even better what it is they need to correct what's going on, or how can we enhance what's already there. So that leads us to the simple question, how can we use the protective factors to surface the protective factors? To Ben's point, looking at the positive as opposed to the negative, how does the protective factors help us see what the real need is and not the assumption of their need? How do we do that? Using the protective factors, understanding that they are resilience. We've talked about it. You guys have put it in the chat actually in how you already do it. We're looking at resilience, the assumption or the presenting issue that we're faced with as workers, as supporters, as aides or case aides or whatever the case may be. How do we use these protective factors? Caroline says she thinks families think they are referred to our agencies for this or that, and not understanding they can ask for help with issues that support family success, like transportation, a refrigerator, housing. That's absolutely right, Caroline. People do come in, they're afraid, and that's what we talk about in the protective factors is one of the things that most of us as humans have a difficult time with is asking for help, right? Come in and we'll present that we need one thing because we really don't want to ask for the actual thing that we need. Ben says community resources, outreaches to where families go, schools, after school programs, grocery stores, social connections are so important. That was alluded to earlier in our response to what is a real need. When we talk about social connections and the lack of social connections is something that is not a presenting issue. If mom is in isolation and mom doesn't have a lot of supports around her, We don't know that when we go in with the presenting problem. We go in with the presenting problem as being truancy. As we talk and reach out and develop this relationship, we find out that mom has very little supports around her to help her get the kids to school, right? Adrian, is this Adrian saying, I tell my families it takes more pride and confidence to ask for help than to try to do it themselves? Good point.
Mm-hmm.
Who use I statements, it can make a need surface. Wow, that's so powerful. Taria says, build healthy relationships and positive communication. All of those things, when we talk about using the protective factors to surface the real need rather than the assumption, that's what we do. Now, Andrew, when we talk about how do we get there, the question becomes motivational interviewing. Does anybody know what is motivational interviewing? Have we heard that phrase before?
Okay, Adrian says it's a new term. Okay. Ben, okay, I think Ben raised his hand. You can take, Ben will take you off of mute if you'd like to share with us.
I'm not sure if it's showing up under, I don't know why it's showing up under Ben, but it's actually Shannon.
Hi, Shannon.
Hey. Motivational interviewing is a perspective of where you're listening and you're not asking questions, because 3 questions in a row is not helpful. It actually can be a hindrance. It's also a way to validate what they're saying, because you're repeating what they're saying when they're finished an idea. That's my motivational interviewing knowledge. I have gone through the class. But on the takes more pride and confidence to ask for help. Our catchment area is very small in resources. We are up in northern New Hampshire, and a lot of people are old school up here, older generations. I believe most of our population is older, 60 or older. We have a lot of grandparents. And they were raised, you don't ask for help. You take care of your family. And the first wall you have to break down is saying, hey, it takes more pride and confidence for you to ask for help than to try to do it on your own, because it's not the same society you grew up in.
Yep.
Thank you for that, Shannon.
So like to do, thank you for that, Shannon. That's actually a really good explanation of what motivational interviewing is. It is where you are providing empathy and compassion and really kind of getting to the core of the goal of where you want families to be and where they want the goal to be, and then motivating them to get there. And so Latisha and I would like to do is just a short role play to kind of give you an indication of what that looks like.
Okay. All right. Hi, Miss Brenda. How are you?
I'm great. How are you today?
I'm not doing so well. I just dropped my 2-year-old off to school, and I was notified that the school is closing and in 30 days, and I have no resources. I don't know what I'm going to do. I need him to be in childcare so that I can work. I just don't know what to do.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, but let me just make sure that I'm clear on what you are identifying. You have a 2-year-old who is currently in school, but his school is about to close.
Yes.
You are working and you need childcare for him. Is that correct?
That is correct. And there's some schools near my home, but he can't go to those schools. They're not quality. I just can't have him anywhere. I need him somewhere that that I can trust that he'll be safe. And I take the bus to work. And so, I need something that's close that I can get him to school and get to work on time.
Okay. So I hear that you are looking for the same quality of care that your son is currently receiving, and that it needs to be a little bit convenient for you because you have to get to work once you drop him off.
Yes, that is
Would
correct.
that be fair?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And so, okay. And so let me ask this question. Are there any centers near your work, walking distance to your work?
I don't know. I've never looked. I just,
Okay.
assumed I would keep him somewhere near home, but I don't know if there's anything near my job.
So I think one of the things that we could do, you and I, is begin to look at maybe centers that are closer to your work, where you would not have to catch the bus once you drop him off, but that you could walk from where he is to your work. So let's try and explore. I realize that we only have limited time to do this, but let's try and explore if there's centers that are actually physically closer to your work, so that maybe it's a nice journey for you and him on the way to work. You drop him at school and then you walk 2 blocks to your work. Do you think that would work for you?
I like to explore that. Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Okay, so let's try to work on that, and we'll touch base with each other, say tomorrow or the next day, to see if we've gotten anywhere. How about that?
Okay, let's do it. Would you give me a list of places, or should I just call around?
I think we're going to work on this problem together. I'm going to see what I find out, and you see what you can find out, and then we'll put our heads together and see what works best for both you and your son.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Brenda.
Okay.
All right.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So let me just ask this question. Has anything like that ever happened to you, where you had to have that kind of interviewing? And if so, what would you have done differently if you were the caseworker in that situation and mom was really kind of needing to have a service, and she expressed her need and we clarified what that need was? I know oftentimes when in childcare situations, if we did it in like 2 minutes just now, but again, Tamara says she usually asks, what have they tried, and try to get them to think of other ideas or things they can do. And that's exactly what we were trying to say, is in motivational interviewing, you're trying to keep mom motivated to get to the goal she's trying to reach, which is to find the center closer to her son. Adrian says, I was most touched by your offering to find ideas and then work together to find a solution together. In motivational interview, that is kind of what we do, because you want to motivate the person toward a specific goal that you've identified that needs to have intervention. And so when we think about how do we offer help, how do we get to the crux of what the need is, we have to find out, is what's presented really what they need? And so the question again comes back to, what would you have done in a situation like that? Is there anything else that we could have said to mom that would have shown her the empathy, shown her that we have a goal that we're going to work toward, help her figure out what she needs to do? Because that's the other part of motivational interviewing, encouraging the person to take some say in what their need is. What would you have done differently in a scenario like that? So Taria says, I asked if she is currently using an agency that helps with co-pays. From there, I will call to get a list of available sitters. That way I can stay within her budget. That's a good idea. That's a good idea. feel, I mean, that's actually what we're trying to do, is by asking certain types of questions, we're getting to the core of what mom needs. In motivational interviewing, next slide, Andrew, motivational interviewing, we're asking specific kinds of questions and we're listening so that we can hear exactly what mom is identifying.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in that scenario, Brenda, I'll just add, I felt heard, right? I felt validated. When you asked, I mean, we didn't practice that role play, but just, the thought of you even suggesting, what about by, near your job, because you picked up that I needed something. I didn't say, really the words convenience, but you picked that up, that I needed something convenient. And it just listening to you, actually, I could have, really see a parent coming in and you just calming their fears, because I didn't know what to do, right, in that scenario. So when we talk about active listening, that's what we're talking about, really listening with the goal to understand, right, and not just listening to respond. And I don't know about you all, but I'm by training, I'm a lawyer. So a lot of times we're not trained to listen to understand. We're trained to listen to analyze, right? And we're analyzing to respond. And so that's totally different from this line of work when I actually moved over to doing policy work around this. So what are some questions, I guess, just thinking about that scenario, what are some questions or in any scenario when you're dealing with, families and determining their needs, what are some questions that you ask to actually get to those real needs, to determine what those needs are? And Shannon says, due to wearing hearing aids, I have to use active listening. It is so much more than words. Yes, it's about body language, eye contact, right? Yes, it is picking up on those non-verbal cues. That's what active listening is all about. So, thank you for that, Shannon, because you actually kind of segue into the next question. But if anybody wants to, kind of go back to, what are some of those questions you would ask to determine that need, feel free to drop them in the chat or raise your hand, and we'll pick back up on that what is active listening piece of it. I think, Shannon, you have your hand raised that you want to unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm actually.
Oh, that's Ben. Okay, the real Ben. Will the real Ben stand up? Yes. Welcome,
Sure.
Ben.
Thank you. I guess with me, active listening is something I've practiced more. I'm fairly new to the field, but something is just sort of waiting. Like when a client is making a statement, sometimes when they're done speaking, I'll think in my head, 1,000, 1,000, just sort of give a little bit of a pause. And more often than not, I find that if I wait long enough, if I wait, they'll actually say something else. And all of a sudden it'll either clarify something that wasn't clear to me before, or, or it will sort of take the conversation into a whole new direction and just sort of open up a whole new place that I hadn't even considered. So that's sort of my thought on active listening, just sort of giving that little pregnant pause.
Thank you so much, Ben. And Adrian says that she uses open questions and allow the other person to speak. Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, how do you practice active listening in your personal and or professional lives? Does anyone want to share? Carolyn says, golden silence. Most people feel compelled to fill silence with something, yes, which is when the good stuff actually comes out. So thank you. You're being comfortable with silence, right? And Ben even said it, just allowing that pause so that folks can have that space to share. Tamara says, asking open-ended questions and really listening to the answer, right? Listening to understand. Yes, I too find the silence is helpful. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Does anyone else want to share anything? Okay, thank you. Brenda, you want me to turn that back over to you? Talk about the next upcoming webinar?
We are actually about 1 minute before we close out. And Tamara says positive affirmations and repeating back what they are saying. That's always good because you're clear on what they're saying and it shows that you have been actively listening. We just want to remind you guys that tomorrow at 12 o'clock is a two-day, half-day training on relationship-based practice and making effective referrals. I do believe that you can still sign up for that. Andrew would let me know if we can't. And on Friday is another webinar, A Taste of Parent Cafe. We all need help sometimes. You can register for Fridays at bestrongfamilies.net .zoom, and it's in the chat, the registration link. Wednesday, August the 18th is another 30-minute webinar. These are all posted in the link. Kathy Wolf will be narrating that one. And on the 19th is another 30-minute webinar, Past the Referral Stage, the Importance of Following Up and Meaningful Relationships. So please plan to join. This is a continuing series that Be Strong Family does on a weekly basis. And please look for these on, you can register on Eventbrite. But please go to our website where you will find all of these trainings and webinars. And if you're interested in attending an upcoming online workshop, you can register for this week's online workshop. But do go to our website where they are posted on a daily basis to let you know what we are doing. Thank you so much for spending this 30 minutes with us. We hope that we were able to give you some insight. Thank you so much.